Gives me amazing pleasure to introduce a chap who's going to help us to imagine getting the results that you really, really want from social media. As we've said, you're all involved in that to some extent. Well, if you've got the right mindset and the right attitude, you can. And in a talk called How to Get Results from Social Media Without It Taking Over Your Life, Mark will help us transform the way you see social media for your business and help you finally get the results that you deserve. Not by spending more time on social media, but less. I hope I can remember that for 2 hours tomorrow morning when I'm sitting in bed scrolling through TikTok. Mark is more than just another social media expert. He's actually combining his experience as an award-winning BBC and ITV journalist with his expertise gained after setting up one of the UK's first specialist social media agencies 13 years ago. Mark and his team now have helped generate more than £20 million, I said yes, £20 million in sales through social media, and also founded the National Positive Social Charity, which goes into schools to teach young people how to take back control of their lives from social media. He also reached the grand final of last year's Speaker Factor competition at the PSA convention. So, please give a massive London warm welcome to Mark Saxby.
It was August 2006 when I knew I'd truly made it. On the phone was a reporter from the Sunday Times, and he wanted to know my views on quiche. Yes, quiche. He'd heard about my passionate campaign to rid the world of the Earth's most gruesome foodstuff, and he wanted to know more. And he wasn't even the only national tabloid or national reporter to call me during that time. Even Alan Jones, Radio 2 DJ, presenter, was a big fan. I had the world at my fingertips. I was walking on the air. You see, the trouble was, my argument was so convincing. You look at the greats, Florence Nightingale, Gandhi, Buddha, Mother Teresa, none of you have ever seen any of them eating a quiche. And incredibly, 92% of the world's wars have been started by leaders who love quiche. An amazing yet unbelievable fact. See, I grew up in Grimsby, glamorous Grimsby as we like to call it. Quiche never reached Grimsby. In a town where all we ate was fish, quiche never reared its ugly head. As a journalist for 20 years in newspapers and magazines and TV and radio, I never had to report on a quiche serial killer or anything else related to quiche. Since leading Status Social, we've never had a quiche manufacturer contact us and say, please promote this evil foodstuff. So quiche has been very away from my life. My family, my beautiful wife, Kerry, my 3 children, Sam, who's 19, Kate, who's 17, Amy, who's just turned 10, they all hate quiche. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. But the trouble is I'm a Christian and I go to church. And what happens whenever there's any sort of bring and share type meal, you get tons and tons of quiche. Families drive into church, realise they've forgotten to bring something, pop into the local co-op, grab the nearest thing off the shelf, which is normally a cheap and slimy quiche, and it appears on the buffet table. And you don't just get one, you get rows and rows and rows of quiche. And if you're lucky to get to the front of the queue, you may get maybe a samosa or a sausage roll, but you're not supposed to be first in queues in churches. You're supposed to be at the back. So therefore, all you get is left with quiche. And after one horrendous moment, in one buffet where all they had was quiche, nothing else to choose from, I decided it was to take action and create Christians Against Quiche. An international campaign group aiming to rid the world of this terrible disease, as we call it in our household, vomit in a flan case. So what's that got to do with... Well, clearly you didn't eat quiche, as we know. So what's that got to do with what I'm talking about today? Well, first of all, I just need to do a quick straw poll. Who here are the righteous who hate quiche? Put your hand up if you hate quiche. You're joking. 2 people in this room. Who here... This is what happens when you go to London. You get a Yorkshire, it's not like this. Come on then. Who are the ones who love quiche? Put your hand up if you love quiche. Oh, you bunch of losers. And who here is wondering whether they've come to the right talk? Yeah, good stuff. So what has this all got to do with? I mean, it's clearly a very tenuous link, but I thought I'd make it anyway. It's all about how do you get results through social media? And I would say that quiche is a far from excellent dish. And my rule number one is to be excellent, which of course is one of the PSA values as well, isn't it? Be excellent. So how can you be excellent? Well, be excellent for me means running your social media, your company, in a way that reflects you well, that makes you look good, that makes your customers look good. Who here would describe their business as excellent, as what they do as excellent? Yeah. Who here would describe what they do as pretty shoddy? No? So I'm imagining those who didn't put their hand up must be somewhere in between, like an excellent shoddiness or a shoddy excellence. I mean, we all have our parts to play. So as a social media trainer, one of the things that I think is a sign of our excellence is that stats say that if you do a workshop, 55% of the effectiveness is the follow-up. Only 10% is actually what happens on the day, and the rest is what happens beforehand. So if 55% is the most important part, that follow-up, we need to offer it to every single client. So we say to all our clients, whenever we train them, you will get 3 to 6 months of follow-up as immediate thing, as part of it, because we think that's important. Excellence is when we had the team from Cristiano Ronaldo's team approach us and said, please can you manage our social media, and this is what we need you to do. And we looked at that list and we thought, we don't like being told what to do. What we'd like to do is actually ask questions and find out what's best for the client, rather than saying yes. So we turned down Cristiano Ronaldo. I would say that's a sign of being excellent when it comes to business. But if you're not, if you're going onto social media and you're doing social media in a non-excellent way, the danger is that all you're doing is making you look shoddy no matter how excellent you are. And it's those times when you need to just think and stop. Is it really right for you to be on social media if you can't do it excellently? And I don't say that everybody should be on social media. I say you should only be on social media if you can do it to a very high standard, which achieves your results and doesn't waste your time and your money and your efforts, because so many of us do. We waste so much time and effort doing social media when it's not achieving anything for us. We had a cosmetics company came to see us, and they said it was a marketing manager, and she'd been sent by her boss. And I said, "What's your objectives?" And she said, "My objective is we want to be as good as our American counterparts." I said, "Great, okay, why are they so good?" And she said, "They've got 1 million likes on Facebook." I said, 1 million likes. Any other objectives? No, just that. We just want 1 million likes on Facebook. So I thought, okay. So I said, well, there's this little hack you can do, which I did on the big screen in front of her, where you can go into Google and you can find out how many people are engaging with a Facebook page, even if you've got no administration access. So I did this hack in front of her. And I found out that out of the 1 million people who liked the American page, 1 person was engaging with it. 1 person out of 1 million people. Now, for me, that's not excellence. For me, that's not a sign of doing things well. That wasn't really going to achieve their objectives. And as you can imagine, we didn't get to work with them because they were stuck on that pure objective. You could say at least they had an objective, but I probably would say it's probably not the right objective. So rule number 1 is being excellent. But the first thing I would say about being excellent is you've got to actually admit to yourself when you're not excellent. So what does not excellent look like? Well, not excellent looks like the company that came to us who said, we've been trying to recruit on using LinkedIn advertising for 3 months. We've spent thousands of pounds, and actually we've not got a single result. And being excellent meant that I didn't say to them, oh yeah, we'll do it for you. Being excellent said, let's look at where you're taking people to. What's the landing page on your website? And when I went to that landing page, there was nothing on there to make you want to work with them. As somebody said to me once, I said, why should somebody want to come work for your business? Why should we do an advertising campaign? And they said, their reason for doing the campaign was they want to work with me. That's not really a reason, is it? That's not going to get somebody to come and work with you when nobody even knows who you are. So we looked at their landing page, we changed it around, and then we launched the advertising campaign. Within 2 weeks, we'd had 10 quality applicants and saved them over £100,000 in recruitment fees. That's when you admit you're not doing well and you need to change. So that's one of the things I'd like you to think about today. What are you not doing well? What do you need to change? So what does excellent look like? Well, excellent means understanding that. Anybody know what that is? That is the LinkedIn algorithm.
Wow.
So I'm going to take off screen and I'm going to ask you some questions about it later. So if you're going to be on social media, you need to be able to understand how they work. What does the algorithm, what do they do? How do they decide what gets seen on the news feed? How do the algorithms, show your content to more people? What excellence means being consistent on social media. Excellence means not using young people to run your social media accounts just because they've grown up with social media. Because somebody who's young doesn't necessarily mean, okay, they might know social media, but do they know how to win people over? Have they got any business acumen? Are they accurate? Do they understand your business? And I'd say the same for VAs. I know there's a lot of VA use in the PSA, but really, is a VA the best person to be doing your social media for you? No. So being excellent means understanding social media, reading lots about it, working with true experts, whatever it takes to get to where you need to be. But as I say, if you can't do that, then just don't be on there at all. So rule number 1 is be excellent. Repeat after me. Be excellent. Good stuff. Okay, great. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is be your target audience. Be your target audience. Now, I find that one of the worst things about being a quiche hater is that the most common response I get is, my mother makes a lovely quiche. I can tell you now she doesn't. In one horrific incident, my daughter went to school and they fed her quiche during school dinners in some sort of evil way to bring quiche through the back door into my family. All I can say is I can see why so many families homeschool. All that in mind, what we find we're very evangelistic about, just like quiche lovers are very evangelistic, is we're evangelistic about ourselves, particularly when it comes to social media. We go on social media and all we do is we talk about us. We talk about what we think is important, what we are passionate about, but is that really the right approach? Or should we really be focusing on the target audience? Or maybe not even the target audience we've got, but the target audience that we want. So, as a journalist, I had some great adventures, was tear gassed, I was in riots, I was dragged across tables in the hunt for murderers. I met some great celebrities like David Hasselhoff. I met Patrick Stewart, the Crankies, amazing people, amazing names. But one day I decided I wanted to work because I worked in local radio and I wanted to work in the national radio. So I was coming to a conference in London for news editors and I contacted the head of BBC 5 Live. Now they were moving up to Salford. I kind of didn't really want to move to London and I thought, okay, well I'll try and persuade him to let me have a job in London, in Salford when they moved. So I said, I'm going to be in London for this conference. Can I have a chat to you when I'm down? He said, yes. And he came down to this conference. He said, I've got 10 minutes, Mark. What do you think of 5 Live? And I said, it's rubbish. It's made by journalists for journalists. And he said, I agree. When do you want to start? And that was my entire interview. And then I turned it down later because it didn't fit my work-life balance. The point was that 5 Live had an audience of 35 to 55-year-olds. That was their target audience, because every station has a target audience in the BBC. But the people who were putting together the shows were journalists in their 20s. So the content that was going onto the station was of interest to them, but not necessarily of interest to the people who are listening. And as a result, the listener figures were falling on the station. How much are we thinking about who our target audience is? Who are we going for? Do we really understand them, how they tick, what they think, what they're passionate about? We're working with a bus company, and it was a social media strategy consultation. And we've been talking about what they needed to do and their target audience. And then during the lunch break, we had a great conversation. One of the marketing assistants said she'd just moved house recently. And she said, we finished the house, we got it all unpacked, I was so relieved to get it all done, and then we decided we're going to go and get chicken dinner. I said, anybody know what chicken dinner is? No, well, me neither. I said, what's a chicken dinner? And the girl said, oh yeah, chicken dinner is a piece of chicken, I don't know what a piece of chicken maybe looks like, but piece of chicken, chips, beans, and gravy.
Quiche. Do you mean quiche?
Beans and gravy, I said, on the same plate, touching each other. Anyway, we got into a real debate in the meeting about whether it was right, ethically right, even more ethically right than to have quiche, ethically right to have beans and gravy on the same plate. And I said, this is your content on social media. And they said, but what's that got to do with buses? And I said, but it's got everything to do with your passengers, because they will have an opinion about beans and gravy The people who travel on buses are working class people who, this is a kind of conversation that they could easily have, just like we're having it now as maybe not working class people, but it's a conversation starter. And if you put this post on your social media, people then will realize you're speaking their language, and therefore then they'll have more bonhomie towards your brand. And then because of the algorithm will love the fact you've got a really successful brand. So when you next post about buses, those people who've engaged with the Beans and Gravy post will see the post about buses. So they put the post out, and it was one of the most successful posts they'd ever had. So who's your target audience? Do you really understand it? Do you really understand who they are and what they think and what's really important to them? So who is your target audience? Who is your target audience? Rule number 2 is be your target audience. Think about who they are, what do they really want. So I'm going to give you again another little exercise. And I'm just going to give you a bit of backdrop actually here, because I'm going to ask you to really work out a bit more about who your target audience is, but I want you to go a bit deeper. And again, in your pairs, I need you to challenge each other. So I did this talk at PSA Yorkshire, and there was somebody there, and they said their target audience was burnt out men. And I said, do you really think, and I wasn't saying that I had the answer to this, do you really think that burnt out men are going to see a post on LinkedIn and go, right, I need to get in contact with you? I mean, you might have the odd one or two, yeah, but I don't think it's going to be a massive amount. I said, where do you really think burnt out men are? Well, who's going to know about them? So we thought, actually, okay, it's actually more likely to be maybe people who are in HR who are having to deal with the burnt out men, deal with all the people who are off work. Okay, well, that's good. We've got some kind of roles now. We've got a title role. So what sector are you more likely to see burnt out men in? Well, it's probably more the legal sector or professional services. So actually the target audience wasn't really the burnt out men. The target audience was the HR professionals in the legal service. So rule number 3 is be social. Be social. So what does be social mean? Well, being social, I think, is about where we go wrong often with social media is we get confused with the fact that we think that media is the most important word when actually it never is. When you're on social media is about engaging with your customers, it's about understanding who they are, it's about getting on their side. It's not about just throwing content at them and hoping that one day they're going to respond in a positive way. I'm going to tell you a story. It's quite an embarrassing story, but it kind of really illustrates the point of where that lack of social element comes in. I was a student in Sheffield many years ago, and I was in this nightclub. It was called the Palais. In Sheffield. It wasn't a very nice nightclub. During the evening, I was there as a trainee journalist, and I saw this girl across the dance floor, and I quite liked the look of her, and I thought, okay, right, I need to go and talk to her. But I realised that if I did, I would just freeze up. I would always, if it was ever in my mind an ulterior motive to talk to a girl, I would have nothing to say. I'd become boring and uninteresting. So I thought, okay, I need to have a new system here. And then it came to me. And I'm going to reenact it now. So, Paul, you're going to be the girl.
I'm not again.
So, I walked across the dance floor very confidently, and I said, kiss me. She did exactly what you guys did. She laughed. I laughed embarrassingly and then slunk back across the dance floor and then hid behind a pillar for the rest of the evening, hoping she wouldn't notice me and thought I was being silly. And do you know what? That's what we do on social media. We dive in for the kiss before we've even got to know somebody first. That's not being social. That's not being social on social media. I imagine nearly all of you are on LinkedIn. I'm going to reenact what I think is the way that most people connect on LinkedIn. Okay.
Got any other speakers present?
Did you feel the rapport being built there, the respect, the conversation starting? I mean, I thought it was very deep myself. No, did you? Why then do we send this generic connection request which says, I want to connect with you? Even to people we know. I mean, I don't think you should ever send it. But we just do because we're lazy and we're in a hurry and we press the wrong buttons on our app. We should never be sending empty messages. That is not social. When you use LinkedIn well, it can be an incredible tool. I remember I decided one day I was going to find out who went to my school in Grimsby who was on LinkedIn, the Wintringham School. I'm sure you've all heard of it. And I did a search for all those who'd been a success and could potentially be customers for Status Social. After many hours of searching, I found 2 people, which was slightly disappointing. But one of them happened to be the head of marketing for Michelin Europe. I thought, great, he sounds interesting. So I thought, okay, right, I'm going to have to compose a message which is going to unlock his mind. So I wrote this message and sent it. A couple of hours later, he responded, Mark, I don't normally respond to my LinkedIn messages. The next time you're passing Michelin, would you like to come in for lunch? When the head of marketing for Michelin says that, you're passing Michelin, you're passing Soak every day of the week, even if you're not. Before long, we were having lunch. We found out, we didn't know each other, found out that he actually lived around the corner from me. He was at school 10 years before me. He then asked me, we talked about family and all sorts. And at the end of the conversation, he said, tell me more about Status Social and what you do. And then it ended up with him saying, can you look at the social media for Michelin restaurants, Michelin tires, and Michelin Europe? All off the back of one LinkedIn message.
How many Michelin stars have they got?
I also sent a message to Morrison's. 2 minutes after my message went through, they asked me for a coffee. The power when you understand your target audience and you're being social and you're thinking about their needs before your own gets amazing results. It's about thinking what do they want? If I'm going to have a conversation, what's the value in it for them? It's a common sentence I use when I approach people as I say, if it would be of value to you, let me know and we'll have a chat. Not, I want to tell you about my amazing speaking, or I can tell you about my amazing workshops, or I can tell you about my amazing management. No, if it's of value to you, but it's working out what the value is in the first place so that you know then the message is going to be great when you send it. I think some of you will have seen this before, the whole know, like, trust, try, buy system. This is a kind of a way you often take people through the sales funnel. And I think it's particularly pertinent when it comes to social media. What happens is, yes, somebody gets to know us, and then maybe they see our posts on social media, and you kind of get across your personality, and they start to like you. Maybe they even meet you in person. Then they might see some recommendations on there, or you might then tell a case study on there, and they get to trust you. And then after a while, they think, okay, right, I don't want to go full thing here because I don't know everything about him, so I'll give it a try. So maybe I'll come along to a webinar or I'll listen to a podcast or I'll have a coffee with them. And then they go for the buy. And then, of course, they love you and then they repeat and they refer. But what we tend to do is we go straight from the no right down to try and make somebody buy. And those other stages are so important if we want to get it right. So how can we get people to like and trust and try? We had a company approached us, and it was a guy who said, I've been following you on LinkedIn for several years, and these are the words he used, and I really like you, I love your stories, you clearly are really great at your job, and I've just moved to a new company, and I'd like you to do a social media consultation with us. Budget's no option, just let us know what you want us to spend. That's a pretty cool call, isn't it, when you get those ones like that? Because he trusted me, he liked me. So rule number 3 is be social. Repeat after me. Be social. Just so, as we was mentioning in the intro, one of the things that I actually do hate is I hate being on social media gratuitously. I hate the way it steals my time. I hate the way that it grabs me and kind of draws me into things that I don't want to spend time on. And as we mentioned earlier on, I run a charity called Positive Social. So we go into schools and help young people make better decisions about how they use social media. We talk to them about is their behavior appropriate? We talk about the algorithms being really addictive, and we also show them how life can be better when they're not spending so much time on social media. They make amazing commitments. It's a really encouraging and exciting charity. We've got around 30 deliverers. Courtney Orange actually is one of your members that delivers into London for us, and we've got loads of PSA members who've got on board and are doing it across the country. So it's a really exciting project, and you can see the changes in the young people. They want to change. And it's only when we go in there do they get that permission to change. Who here feels they're on social media or on their phones more than they should be or want to be? Yeah, most of us. It's hard, isn't it? And it's because of, how do you then match up then with what we're saying about being excellent, being a target audience and being social, if at the same time then I'm going to schools and saying stay off social media? It's about setting habits. It's about doing things in a different way. And I would say, actually, let me give some examples here. I think one thing I would say about being excellent is, if you're excellent on social media, you create one great post a week on LinkedIn, rather than, and which will then have longevity and be seen for a week, than creating 5 average posts. Because that's the way the algorithms are geared. They're geared towards quality, towards meaningful engagements. Excellence means that when you're at your desk, your phone is either behind you or in another room, so you can hear it ring, but you're not picking it up all the time to be distracted and not getting anything done, you're procrastinating. Being excellent is not spending hours scrolling through the news feed, feeling inferior because every other speaker seems to have more gigs than you. Being your target audience is about actually where is your target audience and focusing on that one social network rather than being on loads of social networks and doing them all badly, because actually that's not what your target audience is. And being social, as we know, social media is a great way to start a conversation, but really taking it to another level is outside the conversation, is outside social media. But I also say as well, being social is about saying, actually, when I go out with my friends, I'm not going to be checking my social media. When I'm putting my child to bed, I'm not going to be going and seeing if I've got any emails or looking at my LinkedIn. When I'm out with my wife or husband, I'm not going to be looking at my social media or watching a video on YouTube because we've run out of conversation. So I think you can get it. But it's difficult. Doctors liken our addiction to social media as that suffered by crack cocaine addicts. That is crack cocaine, for those who are wondering. Stephen lent it to me. And that addictive level is really hard to break. I mean, even now, I'm just going to give myself now a dopamine rush. Okay, here we go. I've just picked up my phone. I've not even turned it on, and I'm already getting a dopamine rush in my brain from picking it up. My brain is thinking, he's going to turn it on, he's going to look at something exciting. That's why we need to keep our phones away from us, our phones in other rooms, not walk around the house with it all the time. Just make decisions about how you're using your phone, and therefore then spending less. If you're going to spend time on social media, make sure it's really good quality time rather than actually rubbish time. Because I can tell you now, it's just really important to get these things right. So let's think about these 3 rules. But really there's 4. Yes, there's be excellent, be your target audience, be social, but rule number 4 is actually also be somewhere else. Because no one wants to live life like a sloppy quiche. Thank you.